Joined in Beijing by Michael Powers, Zhiqin Insurance Group Chair Professor with the School of Economics and Management of Tsinghua University, and Liu Zhiqin, a senior researcher at Chongyang Institute of Financial Studies with Renmin University of China. Gentlemen, welcome to the program. We see already China's economy become the second largest in the world in terms of size, and also trading power, the third largest trading nation in the world after US and also the EU. However, when it comes to the use of RMB as a reserve currency worldwide is such a small proportion, why some currencies are being regarded as the reserve power, while other currencies, despite the economy size where the currency originally is coming from, is still very marginalized?
I guess I would begin by saying that currencies play several different roles in the world economy, and we focus on the reserve currency, perhaps largely because it has a special name, reserve currency. But there are also, it's important to consider which currencies predominate in foreign exchange transactions on a daily basis, which ones are the ones most frequently used in debt, in borrowing and lending internationally, and also which ones are used in international trade for transactions. They tend to be highly correlated. If one currency is highly used in one area, it's highly used in the other, with the exception perhaps of foreign exchange turnover, where the US dollar is less dominant, if one's just counting, than it is, say, as a reserve currency. So I think that if it were just an issue of focusing on the reserve currency, there are a number of aspects that are important there. In terms of perhaps long-term stability, confidence of traders and other components of the economy. But when it comes to other things, such as the issuance of debt and daily trading, there certainly is more room for activity and movement up and down. So I think that what we can look at is a multifaceted approach to progressing in terms of changes in the use of various currencies.
Some have been describing the choices of reserve currency for most of the economies in the world. It's almost like a popularity contest. Who is going to be more popular, and what is going to be the deciding factor in determining whether one currency is more popular than the other? It's a very interesting question, isn't it, Professor Powers?
One could look at the war in Eastern Europe, certainly, and the sanctions that were imposed by the United States and the EU as another source of concern in many nations around the world about the dominance of these currencies. So the US dollar is approximately 58% of reserves. The euro is approximately 20% of reserves. Together, that's 78%. That's a very, very large majority. So if these two parties agree on imposing sanctions on countries such as Russia or whatever, they can have a very significant effect. And I think that other countries looking at that situation perhaps feel that in the future we should have a more multilateral contribution to the economy, so that single entities like the United States or Europe can't have so much influence at a particular time in history.
Now, Professor Liu, we see that China, together with some of the Middle Eastern countries, for example, and also some in Latin America, such as Brazil, has been working a lot recently on the currency swap and also the use of RMB in trading between those nations. So how much do you see this will give a momentum for further change in terms of RMB gaining more status as the possibility of reserve currency for the future?
I believe that these actions we have taken with the Middle East or Middle Eastern countries and also some other countries in Arab Asia, oil exporters, because of following point, the point that just as we have already discussed, the popularity. China, by using this data to promote the Chinese yuan or renminbi more popularity, because only by the popularity that the renminbi can be well recognized, well accepted by the global business community. So in this way, that this action is a very strong signal and also a good test for renminbi, whether renminbi can stronger, can stable, and can already secure to safeguard the interests of the trading partners. I believe that not only these countries we have already signed the agreement, but with other countries, for instance, the Belt and Road Initiative countries, we have already signed some renminbi settlement agreement in order to make renminbi more popular to this country, to local community. And also the next step, I think, is more important. Beside or beyond the popularity is how to convertible of the renminbi to the other currencies. By doing so, that we can use the renminbi everywhere to purchase the goods what these targeted countries need. Then the renminbi can be well used and implemented by this in trading business.
With the Russian-Ukraine crisis, economies around the world see financial sanctions against one economy with the strong use of dollar as the reserve currency could actually almost destroy an economy in the long term. So that there is an urgency out of geopolitical challenges we're facing today for China to popularize the RMB as a future possibility for reserve currency. So this is a very interesting balance that it seems that policymakers have to think about it for the longer term.
It's quite important for us to consider the next challenges, whether this currency is to be more secured. That is, mean the security of the currency is becoming more and more important. As we know that the currency security is so sensitive now to all countries. When we see that the US dollar at the moment is no more secured, why did the US dollar is dropped from its share from international settlement and the reserve value? Because of the unsure or unsecured of the US dollar, because of its administration's policies, sanctions and political involvement, intervention in the other countries. So that made many countries, trading partners with the US, they have some worries about the stability of the currency because it's not so secure as before, as it should be. So this is a really big challenge to the rest of the world. So in this way, I should say that we should pay more attention. 3 preconditions for a currency to be a reserved currency in the world. First, the popularity, and the second is security, and the third is convertibility. So all these 3 things will be combined together to become a real currency as a reserved currency in the world. But I have another idea that for one country, especially for China, so large economy, so we should not only have one currency to be as a national reserve currency, we should have multiple alternatives. So except the US dollar, we should have a euro, and also we should have other currencies like a Swiss franc or Japanese yuan even. So in order to avoid some risk-related turbulences happened, so as we in Chinese always say, we should not put all the eggs in one basket. So this is the same, that for reserve currency, we should have multiple reserve currencies, even for China and also for the rest of the world.
Moving on, China is still having huge sums of US dollar debt in hand. So, Mr. Liu, the evolution that we are talking about in terms of reserve currency in the world, how will that impact China's speed and process of holding the US dollar debt?
Yes, in recent years, that many experts have such disputes regarding this question. Many experts argued that China should not continue to hold such a big amount of American debts or something else. But in my opinion, that at this moment, I think it's still too early to think about it, even to take concrete measures, because of two reasons. First, America is still the number one in the world, from scientifically, economically, and also from other fields that the United States, the power is still there. It's dominating in some new technology and also a leading country for advanced economy. So this is no doubt. I think this is a basic question and the background we should understand it. So that's why that the US dollar at the moment is still very strong, occupied already 40% of the international settlement to the volume. So this is a very important background for us to know. But secondly, we should understand that because of the time is changing, the nations, especially the developing nations, have suffered too much and too heavy that from what the US has done before, because of the hegemonic and also its so-called the dominating dollar used to be used as a power to interfere in the other countries' internal affairs and also make troubles everywhere it didn't like. So US dollar is no more as a currency, it's as a cutter or something can be used to hurt other countries' feeling and the economic stability. So these two very big, huge, contradicted factors made America confused image to the world community. So that's why I think the world is considering another alternative, whether we can have something new, more stable, more secure, more reliable currency to supplement, not to replace, because to replace is still too early to say it, but to supplement the US dollar as another channel for the people that to use this currency to make deals, to make tradings, make more satisfied cooperations.
I would say that China is watching very closely the amount of US dollars that it holds in debt, and is making adjustments over time, given the situation in the world economy, so that as the RMB becomes more popular, more commonly used, I would expect to see changes in the holdings, not just China's holdings of U.S. debt, but the holdings of other countries around the world. I don't see that there's any particular crisis or difficulty that would arise from that. I think what Professor Liu suggested in terms of going, the evolution of currencies is quite reasonable. The idea that the U.S. dollar, which is still the dominant currency, and the U.S. is a major economic power, will remain in place, but that perhaps there will be a development of an alternative, some sort of index currency as an alternative, because it's very difficult for the world community to sort of pick one other currency that's going to challenge the dollar and say, or possibly topple it at some point in the future. I think it's much more reasonable to say, well, here's another approach. There's this index approach, and let's see what happens in the market, which one people prefer.
Michael Powers, Liu Zhiqin, gentlemen, thank you so much.